Welcome back everybody for episode 8 of the Delorean build series. Today we're going to be going over the engine prep. Ferrari Steve is going to be getting rid of the variable cam timing and setting his own cam timing. This is the final step before we got to put the car back together and get it running for the very first time. So let's get right to it.
In the DeLorean, we wanted our car to have the correct feeling, or the correct spirit, as it were. I wanted the car to sound like a car from the early 1980s. I wanted to have that smooth, resonant sound at idle, which means we cannot have direct injection because they just simply don't sound like that. This is our direct injection fuel rail. These are plugs that we made to replace the direct injection and plug the cylinders. Like our direct injection, we removed the variable cam timing because we want the engine to be as simple as possible. The smallest amount of moving parts and the simplest configuration that we can have will be the most reliable. The modern cars that we have today that have direct injection and variable cam timing sound very different than the older cars, especially at low speeds idle. The direct injection has more of a boat sound, or a less resonant and smooth sound. Most modern engines that are direct injection, they do not need to worry about resonant tuning as much because the engine has the fuel directed directly into the cylinder. The second reason, and the primary reason, the biggest reason that I did not want to use direct injection in this engine is because we've done a couple of Kia projects previously that still utilize the original Kia ECU and use the original Kia direct injection, or GDI. The problem with it is that we found at high RPM, the pump had a tendency to overheat, and the entire system had shutdown issues or reliability issues where the car had to be allowed to cool down for a period of time for the fuel temperature to go back to normal. The first step of setting this engine up the way we want to set it up is to use a dial indicator on cylinders 2 and 6 and cylinders 1 to set the top dead center on cylinder 1. A degree wheel is then fitted and zeroed. And then our timing chains are put on, and you can see the chains have paint marks here, 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 and then 2 orange marks for each of the lower chain sprockets. That preliminarily sets the timing up. When it's the top dead center in cylinder 1, the cam positions are all correct. This engine is configured as a 60-degree V6. The connecting rod pins on the crank are offset by 60 degrees. The engine ends up actually acting as if it was a 120-degree V6. So what that means is, in a normal inline 6, cylinders 1 and cylinder 6 would be top dead center at the same time. However, in this engine, when we want to set up our timing, we are going to use cylinder 1 for this side of the engine and cylinder 5 for this side of the engine, because cylinder 5 is actually in the same position that cylinder 6 would be timing wise in a normal inline 6. Okay, so our first step in setting up the cam timing for this engine is for us to determine a duration. So we're going to crank it around until our dial indicator up here on the valve latch pad indicates that the valve itself is open. We've done that, and it appears that the valve has opened at 176 degrees. I now will crank the engine around and we will write down the point at which the dial indicator indicates that the valve is closed. You can watch, film the valve. Okay, and it appears that it closed at 28 degrees. So if we write down here 28 and 176, okay, so we're going to add 4 to 180, so that's 184, and we're going to add the 184 to 28. So we're going to end up with 212 degrees as our duration. And for our timing, rather than having it close at 28 degrees after top dead center, I am going to set it up so that it closes at 8 degrees after top dead center. To adjust our timing, all we have to do is loosen these 4 screws, and then run our cam timing back. And as you can see, the cam is not moving. We go back just a little bit further and then go forwards. We'll tighten this up. Snug, and then we'll test it. And right there. Okay. And our opening position now appears to be 148. And our closed position is about 7 degrees. We are going to move it just a tiny bit more. Loosening it up. Leave it right there on its position. Okay, here we go. Go on it. And it is on 9 degrees. now what we're doing is we are checking out what the actual valve clearance is. And once we know the valve clearance, that'll allow me to calculate our open and close point. So this has a valve clearance of 8 thousandths, which would mean that our open point is 12 thousandths on the dial indicator. Now we have the dial indicator set up for our intake cam, and I will crank it around and determine what our duration is for our intake cam. You can see the cam load going towards the pad. Okay, we'll call that open. And it appears that it opened after top dead center at about 7 degrees. And it closes at 241. Duration of 234 degrees. With that duration, we're probably going to want our intake to open at around 12 degrees to 10 degrees before top dead center. Currently it's opening 7 degrees after, which means that we need to advance the timing between 17 and 19 degrees. Tighten just this one right here. Alright, snug. We only need one snug, and we will crank it around. And we are going okay, so here we go. Crank it around. And we will call right there open. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is loosen all of these so they're all loose. Watch our indicator. And you can see, look at the bolts. You can see it moving in the hub without our timing changing. We're currently at 10, 11 degrees. Go just a touch more. All right, I'm gonna call that pretty good. And we'll tighten one of these 3 screws so that it's snug, and then check the timing again. And 10 degrees.
Three days later.
So we're back, it's Monday now. This morning, Steve finished up the cam timing. both cams now are finished on each side. The cam timing on all 4 cams is set. Our intake valves are opening 10 degrees before, and our exhaust valves are closing 8 degrees after, for a total of 18 degrees overlap. We've also got our direct injection pump set back on there with our little plug that we made. It says Mr. Fusion is a throwback to the Back to the Future movie, of course. If you guys can see there. So now that the cam timing is done, we got to put the engine back together. We got to get the covers back on, put the valve cover back on as well, and get the engine prepped to go back into the car. So we got the engine prepped, we got the valve covers put on, we got the dipstick changed over from the other one, we've got all of the pulleys put on and the belt put on and tight. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. In the next one, Martin's going to be putting the engine in the car and getting everything put back together like it was before we took the engine out. See you guys then.